rain had started falling just as the long black luxury car turned into the quiet private road leading to the mansion. The guards at the main gate straightened in surprise when they recognized the vehicle. The billionaire owner of the estate, Victor Langston, was not expected to return for another 3 days. His business trip overseas was supposed to keep him away, and the entire household staff had been working under that assumption. Yet there he was, sitting silently in the back seat, staring out at the familiar property he had built for his family, feeling an unusual tension sitting heavily in his chest. Victor was known for his sharp instincts in business, and today those instincts had pushed him to return home without warning anyone. As the gates opened, the car rolled slowly toward the mansion, its bright headlights cutting through the rain and darkness. Victor's mind drifted to his twin children, Noah and Nora, who were the center of his world after losing his wife 2 years earlier. He had built his empire to secure their future, but deep inside, he always worried whether his success had taken too much time away from them. He had trusted his household staff completely, especially the quiet and hard-working maid named Alina, who had been caring for the twins for nearly a year. She had earned the children's affection quickly, and Victor had always admired her calm and gentle nature. The driver parked near the grand entrance, but something felt off immediately. The front door was slightly open, which was unusual for a house that operated with strict security rules. Victor stepped out, ignoring the rain soaking his coat, and walked toward the entrance with growing concern. The house, usually filled with soft laughter or the sound of cartoons playing in the children's playroom, felt strangely silent. Even the staff members who normally greeted him were nowhere to be seen. His footsteps echoed across the polished marble floor as he entered, his heartbeat growing louder with every step. He called out for the twins, expecting their excited voices to respond, but the silence only deepened. Then he heard something faint coming from the upstairs hallway. It sounded like a muffled cry mixed with hurried footsteps. His protective instincts took over, and he rushed toward the staircase, climbing 2 steps at a time. As he reached the children's wing, he noticed the playroom door was slightly ajar. A dim light flickered inside, casting uneasy shadows across the hallway walls. Victor pushed the door open and froze. The scene in front of him made his breath stop. His twins were sitting close together on the floor, their small hands bound loosely with cloth, fear visible in their tear-filled eyes. Beside them stood Alina, the maid he had trusted with his children's safety. She looked pale and shaken, her hands trembling as she tried to calm the twins. For a moment, Victor felt a wave of anger and confusion crash over him. Nothing about the situation made sense. The room showed signs of disturbance. Toys scattered, a chair knocked over, and the window slightly open as rainwater dripped onto the floor. Alina slowly turned toward Victor, her eyes filled with panic and desperation, as if she had been waiting for him but feared what he might think. She opened her mouth to speak, but before any words came out, a loud noise echoed from somewhere deeper inside the mansion, making all of them flinch. Victor's heart pounded as he realized this was only the beginning of something far more dangerous than he had imagined. Victor's instincts immediately shifted from shock to protection. He rushed toward Noah and Nora, quickly kneeling beside them. His hands moved carefully as he untied the cloth around their wrists, checking to make sure they were not hurt. The twins clung to him tightly, their small bodies shaking as they tried to speak over each other. Their voices were broken by fear, and Victor struggled to understand what had happened. He gently told them to breathe and stay calm, his eyes constantly scanning the room for any sign of danger. Across from him, Alina stood frozen, her face pale and her uniform slightly torn near the sleeve, as if she had been struggling with someone. The distant noise that had echoed through the mansion faded into silence, but it left an unsettling feeling hanging in the air. Victor looked toward Alina, his expression filled with questions he could not yet ask. He had trusted her with the most important part of his life, and the sight of his children tied up created a storm of confusion inside him. Yet something about her trembling hands and tearful eyes did not match the image of someone who had harmed the twins. Before he could speak, Nora clutched his coat and whispered that Alina had told him to stay quiet and not be scared. That sentence only deepened the mystery, leaving Victor unsure whether she had been protecting them or hiding something. Victor slowly stood up, keeping the twins close behind him as he faced Alina. His voice remained controlled but heavy with tension as he asked what had happened inside his own home. Alina struggled to speak at first. She kept glancing toward the hallway, as if expecting someone else to appear. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and shaky. She explained that earlier in the evening, she had noticed strange activity around the backside of the mansion. The security cameras near the garden had briefly gone offline, which she had found unusual because the estate was known for its advanced surveillance system. She said she tried to contact the head of security, but no one responded to her calls. Victor's mind raced as he listened. The Langston Mansion had always been known as one of the safest private estates in the city, protected by trained guards, high-tech alarms, and private monitoring teams. The idea that the security system could fail without explanation disturbed him deeply. He asked where the rest of the staff and guards were, but Alina could only shake her head. She explained that several staff members had left early after receiving unexpected messages claiming that Victor had given them permission to take the evening off. That detail struck Victor immediately because he had given no such order. As Alina continued, she revealed that she had heard someone moving near the children's hallway shortly before Victor arrived. Fearing for the twins' safety, she had quickly hidden them inside the playroom and tied their hands loosely to stop them from running toward the hallway or making loud noises that could attract attention. She insisted she had planned to untie them as soon as she confirmed whether the danger was real. Her explanation sounded desperate but sincere, leaving Victor torn between suspicion and understanding. The rain outside grew heavier, its sound tapping loudly against the mansion windows. Victor walked toward the slightly open window in the playroom and noticed faint muddy footprints leading across the polished floor toward the corridor. The sight made his chest tighten. Someone had been inside his home, someone who knew enough about the estate to avoid immediate detection. As he stared at the footprints, another faint sound echoed from downstairs, this time closer, like a door slowly creaking open somewhere in the vast mansion, making Victor realize that whoever had entered might still be inside. Victor quickly motioned for the twins to stay behind him as he stepped closer to the hallway, his senses fully alert. The massive mansion, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt unfamiliar and threatening. Every small sound seemed louder than usual. The rain striking the tall glass windows, the faint hum of the emergency lights, and the echo of his own breathing. He turned toward Alina and told her to stay with Noah and Nora no matter what happened. His voice carried authority, but inside his thoughts were spinning with questions about who could plan something so carefully inside one of the most secure private estates in the city. Alina nodded, holding the twins close, but her eyes kept drifting toward the hallway. Fear was visible in her expression, yet there was also determination. She whispered softly to the children, trying to comfort them, while her mind replayed the strange events from earlier. She remembered the moment the security system had flickered off for several seconds before restarting. At first, she thought it was just a technical glitch, but then she noticed when the garden lights had gone dark, leaving part of the property hidden in shadow. That memory kept returning to her, making her wonder if someone had been testing the mansion's defenses long before Victor arrived. Victor stepped carefully into the hallway, noticing the muddy footprints becoming clearer under the dim lights. They led toward the main staircase and then disappeared near the corner that connected to the private study and security control room. His jaw tightened as he realized that if someone had reached that part of the mansion, they might have gained access to the surveillance network. The Langston estate was famous for its advanced security technology, and only a handful of trusted employees knew how to operate it. The idea that someone could manipulate it suggested careful planning and inside knowledge. Downstairs, the silence felt heavier with every step Victor took. He pulled out his phone, trying to contact the head of security again, but the call failed to connect. The signal inside the mansion seemed unusually weak, which had never happened before. That detail added another layer of unease. Victor began to suspect that whoever was behind this intrusion had not only entered the property, but had also found a way to interfere with communication systems. He moved toward the security control room, his footsteps slow but steady, preparing himself for whatever he might find inside. Upstairs, Alina sat on the floor beside the twins, trying to distract them by asking about their favorite bedtime stories, but the children kept glancing toward the door, clearly sensing that something was wrong. Noah quietly asked if someone bad was in the house. Alina hesitated before answering, choosing her words carefully. She told him that sometimes unexpected visitors make mistakes, and adults have to fix those mistakes. Her voice remained gentle, but her hands trembled slightly as she held them. Deep inside, she felt guilt creeping in, wondering if she should have warned Victor sooner about the unusual behavior she had noticed among certain staff members over the past few weeks. She remembered overhearing 2 temporary workers whispering near the kitchen about Victor's sudden travel schedule. At the time, it seemed like harmless gossip, but now it felt suspicious. Those workers had left the mansion only days ago, and she had never learned who had hired them. The memory made her chest tighten as she realized the situation might have been building slowly, hidden beneath normal daily routines. Meanwhile, Victor reached the security control room and pushed the door open cautiously. The monitors inside flickered with unstable footage, some screens showing empty hallways, while others displayed frozen images of rooms that should have been active. One chair near the control panel was slightly pulled back, as if someone had left in a hurry. Victor stepped closer, noticing a faint reflection on one of the dark screens behind him. His heartbeat slowed for a second as the reflection suggested that he might not be alone in the room, and the realization sent a cold wave of tension through him as he slowly turned around. Victor turned slowly, his pulse pounding in his ears as his eyes scanned the dim security control room. For a brief second, he saw a movement near the far wall where the backup power unit stood. The lights flickered again, casting long shadows that shifted across the monitors. His breath stayed steady, but every instinct inside him screamed that someone had been standing there moments ago. He stepped forward cautiously, his shoes pressing softly against the carpeted floor, while his mind calculated every possible threat. The billionaire businessman who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation now faced a situation he could neither predict nor control. The security monitors suddenly blinked, switching rapidly between different camera feeds. Hallways, staircases, empty guest rooms, and dark corners of the mansion flashed across the screens. Victor noticed one camera briefly showing the back garden gate slightly open, swinging slowly under the heavy rain. That sight confirmed his fear that this was not a random intrusion. Whoever had entered knew the property well enough to avoid direct detection. He reached toward the control panel, attempting to manually reset the surveillance system, but the interface displayed an error message he had never seen before. The system was locked behind a security override that required a secondary authorization code, a code only known to Victor and one other trusted executive who managed the estate's private operations. Upstairs, the twins sat quietly against Alina, their small hands gripping her uniform tightly. The mansion felt colder with each passing minute. Nora asked if their father would be safe, her voice barely louder than the sound of rain tapping against the window. Alina forced a gentle smile and told her that Victor was strong and smart, but inside, she felt fear tightening around her thoughts. She could not forget the strange phone call she had received earlier that evening from an unknown number. The caller had stayed silent for several seconds before hanging up. At the time, she dismissed it as a wrong number, but now the memory returned with disturbing clarity. Alina stood slowly and walked toward the playroom door, listening carefully. The hallway outside remained quiet, but something about the silence felt unnatural, like the mansion itself was holding its breath. She remembered noticing a black vehicle parked briefly near the service entrance earlier in the afternoon. She had assumed it belonged to one of the maintenance contractors, yet she never saw anyone enter through the main staff corridor. That memory made her heart race as she realized someone could have gained access long before the evening chaos began. Back inside the security control room, Victor heard a faint metallic sound coming from the private study next door. It was subtle, like a drawer being closed carefully. He moved toward the connecting door, his hand pausing on the handle as he listened. The mansion's emergency lights dimmed again, and for a moment, the entire floor fell into near darkness. The only light came from the flashing monitors behind him, casting brief, unsettling reflections across the hallway outside the room. Victor pushed the study door open and stepped inside. The air felt colder there, carrying the faint scent of rain and something unfamiliar. Papers on his desk were slightly out of place, and one of his locked document drawers stood partially open. His mind raced through the sensitive information stored there. private contracts, estate security layouts, and confidential family records. As he approached the desk, he noticed a small device resting near the edge, blinking with a soft red light, something that definitely did not belong in his study. At the same moment upstairs, a sudden loud thud echoed from somewhere within the mansion walls, making Alina and the twins jump in fear. The hallway lights flickered again, this time staying dim longer than before. Alina quickly locked the playroom door and pulled the twins closer, her eyes fixed on the entrance as her breathing grew shallow. Downstairs, Victor stared at the blinking device, realizing it might be connected to the mansion's compromised security system. Just as he reached toward it, he heard footsteps approaching outside the study door, slow and deliberate, stopping just inches from where he stood. Victor froze as the footsteps outside the study door stopped completely. The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise. He slowly pulled his hand back from the blinking device on his desk, his attention shifting fully toward the door. His mind raced through possibilities: a security breach, a targeted threat, or something even more personal. The billionaire mansion that had always symbolized safety for his family now felt like a trap closing around him. He stepped backward quietly, positioning himself near the side of the desk, his eyes locked on the handle as it moved slightly, as if someone on the other side was testing whether the door was locked. The handle stopped moving, and for several seconds, nothing happened. Victor strained to listen, but the only sound was the rain hitting the tall windows across the hallway. Then, without warning, his phone vibrated in his pocket, making him flinch. He quickly silenced it and glanced at the screen. The message displayed came from an unknown number. It contained only a short sentence: "Check the nursery camera." His stomach tightened instantly. The nursery had not been used since the twins were infants, and the cameras in that section of the mansion had been inactive for years. The message felt like someone was guiding him, or worse, watching his every move inside his own home. Upstairs, Alina sat with Noah and Nora as the power flickered again, this time causing the playroom lights to shut off for several seconds. The children clung to her tightly, their breathing uneven. When the emergency lights turned back on, she noticed something that made her heart drop. The hallway light beneath the playroom door had changed. A shadow had appeared outside, barely visible but clearly moving. Her mind raced as she quietly stood and guided the twins behind a large storage cabinet filled with toys and blankets. She whispered for them to stay completely silent, promising she would not leave them. Downstairs, Victor opened the security panel on his phone and tried to access the mansion's camera system remotely. The system lagged before loading, showing multiple camera feeds reconnecting one by one. When he reached the old nursery camera, the screen flickered with static before revealing a dim, grainy view of the abandoned room. At first, everything looked normal: dusty furniture, covered cribs, and closed curtains. But as the image stabilized, Victor noticed something chilling. One of the rocking chairs near the window was moving slightly, swaying back and forth as if someone had just stood up from it. Victor's chest tightened as another message appeared on his phone: "You trusted the wrong people." His mind immediately jumped to the security override code that had locked him out earlier. Only one other person had access to it: his longtime estate operations manager, Daniel Reeves, a man who had worked beside him for nearly a decade. Daniel had handled staff hiring, surveillance upgrades, and internal security reports. Victor felt a wave of disbelief mixed with anger as he remembered Daniel, insisting that new temporary workers were necessary to improve efficiency. The realization that someone from inside his trusted circle might be involved shook him deeply. Meanwhile, upstairs, the faint sound of floorboard creaking echoed just outside the playroom door. Alina's hands trembled as she searched the room for anything that could help protect the twins if the door opened. Her mind flashed back to earlier that day when she noticed Daniel walking to the children's hallway, claiming he was checking new security installations. Something that felt unusual at the time, but not alarming enough to question. Back in the study, Victor slowly stepped toward the door, his breathing controlled but tense. The hallway lights flickered again, and as he reached the handle, his phone displayed a new camera alert showing movement detected directly outside the playroom where his children were hiding, making him realize the danger was moving closer to the twins with every passing second. Victor's heart pounded as he saw the motion alert outside the playroom on his phone screen. Without thinking, He rushed out of the study and sprinted toward the staircase, his mind focused on only one thing: reaching his children before whoever was inside the mansion got to them. The mansion halls felt longer than ever as the emergency lights flickered, casting broken shadows along the walls. Every step echoed through the Billionaire estate, mixing with the steady sound of rain outside. He called out Alina's name quietly through his earpiece phone, hoping she could hear him, warning her that someone was approaching the playroom. Upstairs, the shadow beneath the playroom door grew darker. The handle moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if the person outside was trying not to make noise. Alina held Noah and Nora close, whispering for them to stay silent. Her breathing became shallow, and her hands tightened around them as she searched the room for any way to delay whoever was outside. The door suddenly pushed open slightly, stopping against the safety stopper Alina had locked earlier. A familiar voice spoke from the hallway, calm and controlled, calling her name. The voice belonged to Daniel Reeves. Victor reached the children's hallway, just as he saw Daniel standing in the doorway of the playroom, trying to push the door open further. Victor's voice thundered through the hallway, ordering him to step away. Daniel slowly turned, his expression surprisingly calm, almost disappointed. He raised his hand slightly, as if trying to show he meant no immediate harm. The twins ran toward Victor the moment they saw him, and he pulled him behind him protectively, while keeping his eyes locked on Daniel. Daniel began speaking in a steady voice, explaining that Victor had built a powerful empire, but ignored how many enemies that success had created. He claimed the mansion security breach was meant to expose weaknesses, insisting he was working with a private security group hired secretly by one of Victor's business rivals. Daniel said his plan was to demonstrate how easily someone could reach Victor's family, forcing Victor into a high-stakes negotiation that would cost him control over one of his largest companies. He insisted he never intended to hurt the children, and only staged the situation to create pressure. Victor felt anger and betrayal collide inside him. The man he trusted with his estate operations had carefully planned an emotional and psychological attack using his own family. As Daniel spoke, security sirens suddenly echoed through the mansion. Victor had activated a silent emergency alert earlier through his phone. Within moments, the estate's backup security team, who operated off-site, began surrounding the property. Daniel's calm expression faded slightly as he realized the situation was slipping from his control. Daniel slowly stepped back, but before anyone could react further, Alina spoke up. Her voice shook, but her words carried weight as she revealed she had secretly contacted the off-site security team the moment she noticed the cameras failing hours earlier. She had recognized unusual patterns in Daniel's recent behavior and decided to report it quietly without causing panic. Her decision had helped the backup team reach the estate faster than expected, trapping Daniel before he could escape. Security officers soon entered the hallway and escorted Daniel away, ending the immediate threat. The twins clung to Victor and Alina, the tension slowly easing as the mansion lights returned to normal. Victor looked at Alina with deep gratitude, realizing her quick thinking had protected his children when his powerful systems failed. But as the officers reviewed the mansion security logs later that night, one final discovery shocked Victor. The system records showed Daniel had been receiving anonymous instructions from an unknown, encrypted source for weeks. The messages ended only minutes before Victor arrived home unannounced. Whoever had guided Daniel had disappeared completely, leaving no trace, suggesting that the danger surrounding Victor's family might not have ended at all. The mansion slowly returned to calm as dawn began to break through the rain clouds. Emergency lights were replaced by warm morning sunlight spilling through the tall windows, bringing a sense of relief that had felt impossible only hours earlier. Victor sat in the main living room with Noah and Nora curled beside him, both finally asleep after the terrifying night. The billionaire father gently brushed their hair back, his mind replaying everything that had happened inside the Langston mansion. The luxury estate, known for its advanced security system and private protection teams, had nearly failed in protecting what mattered most to him, his family. Across the room, Alina stood quietly, unsure whether she should stay or give Victor space. Her uniform was still slightly torn, and exhaustion was visible on her face. When Victor finally looked up at her, his expression carried something different from his usual commanding presence. It carried gratitude, respect, and deep reflection. He stood and walked toward her, his voice calm but sincere as he thanked her for protecting his twins when danger entered his home. Alina tried to downplay her actions, saying she simply followed her instincts, but Victor knew her quick decisions and courage had prevented the situation from becoming far worse. Later that morning, the backup security team completed their investigation inside the Billionaire mansion. They confirmed that Daniel Reeves had carefully manipulated several internal systems over weeks, using his trusted position to bypass security layers without raising alarms. His plan had relied on psychological pressure rather than physical harm, aiming to force Victor into business surrender through fear. The authorities took Daniel into custody, and while he admitted to working under external influence, he could not provide clear information about the anonymous source that had guided him. The encrypted messages had vanished completely, leaving behind only fragments of data that investigators were still trying to decode. Victor gathered his entire household staff that afternoon in the main hall. His voice carried both strength and humility as he spoke openly about the incident. He admitted that success and power had made him rely too heavily on systems instead of people. He announced new security changes, but more importantly, he promised to personally stay involved in the safety and well-being of everyone living and working inside the mansion. He also offered long-term contracts and additional support to loyal staff members who had remained honest during the crisis, emphasizing that trust could not be replaced by technology alone. The twins, though still shaken, slowly returned to their playful energy over the next few days. They refused to leave Alina's side, seeing her not just as a maid, but as someone who had protected them like family. Victor noticed this bond and made a life-changing decision. He promoted Alina to a permanent family caretaker role, ensuring she would always remain close to the children's lives and future. Weeks later, while the mansion security system operated stronger than ever, Victor often found himself reflecting on that night. He realized that true strength was not measured by wealth or influence, but by the people who stood beside you during moments of fear and uncertainty. Though investigators continued searching for the unknown mastermind behind the encrypted messages, Victor chose not to live in constant fear. Instead, he focused on rebuilding trust within his home. One quiet evening, as Victor watched his twins laugh in the garden under Alina's supervision, he understood a powerful truth. The greatest protection for any family was not locked gates, advanced surveillance, or billionaire power. It was loyalty, courage, and human connection, the very things that had saved his children when everything else had failed.